Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Ben and I are just going to shoot from the hip on this one, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end. And if anybody wants, we're going to try to do an official series or another meeting on this one. But Ben, not this Ben, the other Ben Walker, who does a lot of work with Revis on the tasks. We just released the task, I think, yesterday. All the potential tasks that we could use for the race, depending on the weather. And he thought it'd be really good to have another one of these challenge series on what to do with those, how to get it in the phone, how to plan your day and all that kind of thing, which is great. So that will not be covered in this one, but if you have some questions after we do this one on nutrition and hydration, Ben and I'll definitely take a stab at it because we've done that a ton if we have time. But yeah, we're going to be talking about game day nutrition and hydration. And Ben, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I wanted to start with was for each category, kind of overview like the day before, kind of just some general topics. We're not going to like dive into nutrition as a topic because that's like a 3-hour conversation, but more race specific. So, hydration is interesting. It's changed a lot over the years. There's a lot of different opinions. Gatorade with the work they did led to some opinions that have, I think, evolved over time, and almost 100% or 180-degree change. So, one of the things to think about is how much did you drink every day? A bunch of people have different opinions. A liter per 50 pounds of body weight. I've heard that a liter per 20 kilograms of body weight. Those are all reasonable things. I think if you're an adult man, try and drink 3 liters of water minimum. Adult woman, 2.5. That's a good baseline. Tea can count. But when you start talking about booze and Coke and even juice and milk, like that really, you should almost count that as calories and not as hydration. So if you're going to pay attention to trying to stay hydrated, really look at water. And like I said, I think tea's a fine substitute as well. It by itself isn't enough. We've all heard about electrolytes and the need for them. Kind of a weird quirk of modern diets is if you eat really shitty processed foods, you don't need to supplement with electrolytes much because you're eating a crap ton of potassium and sodium anyways. If you eat a nice whole food, low processed diet, there's a high likelihood you need to supplement with electrolytes, especially if you're training hard. So if you just eat well and don't do much, I don't know that you need to do that. But if you're following the training plan and you're out there getting after it, pretty likely you're low on electrolytes. The first step, if that's you, is make sure you salt your food. We could spend another 2 hours talking about, heart disease and hypertension and salt. And all I can say, if you trust me, is salt your food. You won't die. It's good for you. And then beyond that, if you're training hard and eating a good diet, I think taking a daily electrolyte's probably a good idea. I like LMNT, which is a Rob Wolf's. It's everywhere now. It tastes fairly salty, so you got to like salt, or that one's going to be weird. But honestly, you could take anything. Nuns are good. Liquid IV's fine. There's a million of them. It's really what you like and makes you happy. I will say that for the general supplementing, taking the ones with carbs attached to them doesn't make a lot of sense. That can have some application while exercising. But for the daily stuff, I think you should look at just a straight up electrolyte supplement. So that's kind of like just living. If in terms of, Gavin, you got anything to add to that?
I was just going to say that they're not all the same, interestingly, and some have bothered my stomach quite a bit in the past. and others are great, like Scratch Labs. I really like. Uh, I'm going to be bringing a ton of On It. On It makes a new one now. Their original one that Ben and I worked with in the race, I didn't really dig. I didn't like how it tasted. So you want to just you want to like how it tastes basically, and then it doesn't give you any GI, and it's kind of weird. I've there's one that's made actually out of Salt Lake. That's just I forget what that. Remember that one, Ben? It was it's basically just water and salt. It doesn't taste like anything, and you just squirt, but it's really dense with salt, and you just squirt it into your stuff, and it doesn't have any flavor. But that never bothered my stomach. So I guess what I'm saying is it'd be nice to experiment a little, and hopefully you have before the race, just so you know that we will have a lot of stuff on hand, but it may not work with you.
Yeah. And overall, that's when we talk about food, everything overriding thing is it's got to fit your palate and your stomach. Um, so in race hydration, this is an interesting topic. And I was alluding to it, the Gatorade thing. There's all these formulas on how much to drink, per hour or 45 minutes or whatever. You can go read the book Waterlogged, which will tell you a different story. And what I'm getting at is I don't think there's a really good consensus out there. So the consensus that I think is intelligent is, this is a shitty answer, but you got to figure out what works for you. Some people need more water than others, period. I have a friend that's a climber, climbs in South Bolivia, etc. He'll go on a 20-hour alpine ascent at 20,000 feet with a liter of water and be fine. Aaron Durgatti has trained his own body to he does the X-Alps on somewhere around a liter to 2 liters of water a day. Gavin was drinking 4 or 5. And again, nobody's wrong. They're just way different. So in terms of total liquid, it's going to be body dependent. What I do think is a good guideline is the drink to thirst is good. Forcing water down your face, I think there's pretty good science that's not the route to go, unless you're like totally adverse to drinking. And there's people out there that are. I think drinking to thirst is fine, especially on a stage race, because you're going to get to every night rehydrate. So one of the things about endurance racing that is not part of normal life is you're going to get dehydrated. That's just part of the deal. Like if you have to piss every 5 minutes and you feel perfect and your sweat's clear, you're probably not doing it right. Nobody who does hard endurance races doesn't come away dehydrated. And we know that because they do all these studies where they weigh people beginning and end, and you always weigh 3-4 pounds less every day, especially on a long race, etc. So, you're going to get dehydrated each day. At night, you're going to get to rehydrate, which is good. And then, of course, the goal during the day is to stay with maximum performance. And so in terms of hydration, number one, drinking to thirst is important. I think doing like a half water, not half and half mix, like drink a bottle of water, let's say a 500 mils. And then the next one, maybe that one's got your electrolytes in it. And then half, 500 mils of water, and you alternate. That'll keep you from totally overdosing on electrolytes or carbs if you're putting, sugars in your water. And we'll talk about that in a minute. It'll keep your taste from burning out. Gavin can speak to doing this for 12 days where like, go try and drink an energy drink for 12 days straight and tell me how that works out. Like you're going to want to like scrape your tongue off. So I, mixing it up and finding what's right for you is important. It's not a great answer, but I think it's a good starting point where you can go into the race and at least have a strategy of like, 2 bottles, electrolyte, 1 water, switch that up, drink to thirst, and see how it goes. In terms of the actual race, we're gonna do, Gavin, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're gonna do two aid station, whatever aid stations. Like there'll be two this year, right?
At least two.
Okay.
If we've got the staff, we'll try to even have more. It depends on the course of that day and the tasks that day, but yeah, we're going to try to at least have two.
So you have a starting, you have two more, and then there's the end where it doesn't matter if you wind up with none. That being said, I think a minimum you should always be walking around with when you leave an aid station is a liter and a half. That's what I did last year. And it was tight. Like when I went out in the boonies on the last day, I was out. But if you carry around 3.5, you're not going to move. You're going to be like a turtle walking around on the ground. So it's a total gamble. If you know you need more water, take a little more. But I think a liter and a half is minimum every time you walk away from a source of water. In addition to that,
Where you can get stuck, especially where we race, there's been a few of these in the X-Alps where there's water everywhere, where, the plan looked like X. I got a liter and a half. I bomb out in the middle of nowhere. The next launch, we've screwed up navigation. It's hot as hell. And the next launch, I haven't had any water for an hour, and I got the whole cotton tongue going on. Pretty hard to fly very well. So I would lean towards might screw this up and might not get to an aid station. That sucks because you got to carry more water, but have enough. Plan for things.
And we're bringing it up.
You're going to go wrong one of the days. One of the 3 days, so shit ain't going to work out.
And last year we had a bunch of comments of people who were like,
dying.
I didn't have enough water. Like, it's an unsupported race. So take some friggin' water. We're warning you is what we're doing right now, is like, you got to take care of yourself. Where the race will have some logistics, but Gavin's totally right. You're going to blow it. You're going to blow a launch. You're going to be in the middle of nowhere. I don't know. Like, you're going to be out of water and it's going to be your fault. It's basically what I'm telling you.
So, yeah, and I mean, I think
he's right. Don't be shy.
You'll survive. But you don't tend to fly very well if you're not hydrated very well. So like Ben said, you will get dehydrated. That's a guarantee. And like Aaron, he's kind of a work of art. He's been working on this program he's been doing for 8 years, I think now. And it's really just to carry less stuff. But remember that he doesn't do that 24 hours a day. He hyperhydrates at night. He goes crazy and he doesn't drink anything. And I mean, I'm talking about drinking alcohol. So, he's not screwing up his sugar at night. He's getting a good sleep, but he's also hyperhydrating then. And that just allows him basically to go all day without carrying any water. But it's too late for that. You can't just, that's the strategy I'm going to do. He's been training that for years. That's not something you can just do overnight.
Well, is on the track, do you mind just while we're on the topic of water, I know we're down in the desert. I've never been down there. Are there water sources if you were to take a small filter? Is that nothing? No. It's totally dry. Okay. No. Good to know. Yeah.
There are a couple lakes, but you don't plan on it. I mean, there's springs, but you have to know the area. No, especially this time of year. It's actually wet. It's been a wet year. There may be, but don't plan on it. But just as a refresher, everybody, so the first turn point every day will be a place that everybody has to get to that I can drive to. So you will give me a bag of all your crap that's heavy and clothes, whatever you want. You can put anything in the bag. I don't care what you put in the bag. That will be at your first launch. And as well as a ton of water and a ton of electrolytes and a ton of protein bars and all that kind of thing. So there's no reason to worry about that first hike. And then when you get up there, then we will have already briefed everybody on where the second one is going to be. You might not make it to the second one though. So from the first resupply to the rest of the day, you want to be thinking that, okay, I can be self-supported the rest of the day. Which where we are can be really hot. It could be a long day. That could be a lot of water.
Yeah. And the conditions are, when we were talking about everybody's different. The conditions obviously dictate that too, right? So some people are coming from low altitude. The altitude itself is going to take some water out of you. Some people are coming from cool climates. It could be hot. All those things are a factor just for you to think about. So if you think you can actually run on X amount of liters an hour and it's now hot, high altitude, and you're the opposite, maybe you need to add some. So I don't have a formula for you, but it's worth thinking about. In terms of electrolytes while racing, you've got two options. You have powders that you can put into water. Some of those have carbs, and we're going to talk about nutrition in a minute. Some are just straight electrolytes. I like the pills because they don't taste like anything, and I can just shove whatever 3 pills in my mouth every 2 hours or whatever. There's a million out there. There's S caps, there's hammer caps, there's Onnit, there's powder, there's Thorn. We're not here to advertise for you, but you need to go racing with electrolytes in your kit, and you need to be conscious that about every other, half liter to liter, depending on how salty your sweat is, you're re-electrolyting yourself. So total FUBAR is to go out with no electrolytes. You're going to, crash. There's guaranteed.
Ben, can you overdo it? What's too much?
100%. Yeah. I think as a baseline, just tell yourself the half and half rule. Half your liquid should be water and half should have some electrolytes in there, and you'll be fine. Solid electrolyte intake is way overdoing it, just especially given that we're there in October. It's not like it's in the Sahara in July. I think way overdoing it. In terms of like how much you need, I think everyone's heard of hyponatremia, which is like overhydration. That'll actually kill you. You have to make yourself be there. So I only bring it up in that, like, back to drink to thirst. Don't set a timer. Don't drink a liter of water every 30 minutes. Those are the people that wind up having problems. It's documented, happens often enough. They don't take electrolytes, number one, and they take on way too much water. So don't force liquid in your mouth and take electrolytes, and it won't be a problem. If you're a super nerd, I'm going to give you something you can do, and it's the sweat test. So you go weigh yourself, then you go do an hour or two, or however you want to do it, but let's say an hour hard. I'm talking proper hard in a temperature. This is, again, Nerdville, of what you think would be relevant, and then weigh yourself at the end. Whatever you lost, that's how much you sweat out every hour of exercise. And then you can probably not replace it 1 for 1, but like 3/4 to 1. And you can get close to feeling like you're staying in a reasonable amount of hydration. It works. Elite athletes do it, but it's a pretty big nerd factor that at least I want to throw out in case you like numbers. Things about race day that are not relevant to when we were talking about actual living. When I said like things like, Coke and juice don't count. On race day, Coke can be like a magic elixir. So I love drinking Coca-Cola on a big, nasty, hard day. It's got caffeine, it's got sugar. It's really more about eating than drinking. But I wanted to point out that some of the things that we try and live by when we're having a healthy athletic diet is not really relevant when you're going on 3 12-hour hard days. So if you roll by a gas station and it's 2:00 in the afternoon and you just bombed out and you're sweating your ass off, I would walk right in there and grab a giant Slurpee and crush it. And the next hour of your life will probably be good. I've seen Gavin with like 5 ice creams in his hand at once, trying to eat them in the middle of a hot day in the Alps. So, yeah, don't be shy. You got any thoughts on that? All of that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you know, Ben's right. If you train, you know, what I definitely learned in the X-Alps is 12 days is different than 24 hours or 48 hours. You know, if you train pretty hard, nobody really talks too much about nutrition and stuff in an ultra because you can literally live on Coke. You've trained really hard and your body will deal with it. As the days add up, you can't do that. We tried that in 2015 where I was kind of just constantly on the verge of bonking all the time. And so things like Coke started to sound really good. Well, you can't live on Coke for 12 days, especially if you haven't trained on it all that time. So my body started blowing up like a balloon. I had all kinds of inflammation problems and that kind of thing. In a race like the XRedRocks, I don't think that's going to be an issue. You know, you've every night we're going to be home back where we started. You can eat well. We're going to talk about nutrition here in a little bit. Monroe has no food, none after 9 p.m. anywhere except, you know, Burger King and McDonald's. And before 9 p.m., that's about what it has as well. So there's not a lot of places to eat. And most of the time you are going to be getting home after a point where you're toast. Can't go get a pizza, can't get anything. So think about this before the race starts. You know, have good food that's going to make your body feel good, sorted, because you won't be able to do it late. You know, when we were in the Alps, it was, you know, you could get anything anywhere. It's really easy to eat. So you know, that's not the case in Monroe. So yeah, and then on the back to the hydration thing, it's really, you know, once you kind of get into a regimen and a program, then it shouldn't really be a big stressor. It just does suck to be really thirsty and really, you know, really cotton mouthed, and that's not much fun. So in the race, don't be shy. A lot of people did it last year. You know, hey, I really need something, and you know, we are not promising that because it just depends on staff and where you are and what you do. But we'll try to get to you. So I mean, in this race, you know, unless you're in the pro category, you're going for the big money, just stop and wait for a bit. You know, you don't get crazy dehydrated. That's dangerous.
Agreed. And when I said everyone's gonna get dehydrated, I didn't mean like you're pissing chocolate milk. I just meant you're not going to be perfect at the end of every day, which is a good thought. You know, pay attention to your body. You will piss less. That again is totally normal, and it shouldn't actually be clear. If you start seeing weird things, like it can start looking like chocolate milk, you have a problem and you need to call someone and we're going to come help you. And if you haven't pissed for like 7 hours and you're drinking a lot of water, you should say something. So I don't expect any of that to happen. Those are all extreme cases, but you know, you all have been in your body for, you know, between 20 some years and 50 some years or 60, whatever. You know what looks broken and what looks right. If it looks broken, say something, and we'll try and find some help for you for sure. Food. I said we're not going to do the basics. Like what you should eat as a general athlete is a very gigantic conversation that we're not going to cover here. So we're going to cover the night before or night of, if in race, and then the morning of, and then during racing. So, you know, old school was carb load. And there's truth to that. And then what it meant in terms of truth and where it got taken to are two different things. So the body stores glycogen, which is sugar, which is carbohydrate, in the muscles as available fuel. And then it stores a little bit in the liver, and then there's a couple other places it stores a little bit, but it has a fixed cap on the amount of glycogen it can store. So The reason we end up eating carbohydrates as our primary fuel during endurance racing is you use the glycogen in your muscles and you need to replenish it. What that tells you about the night before is that trying to eat like a 500-gram carbohydrate dinner is stupid, because you can only store like 100 to 150 grams of carbs, and the rest you're just going to shit out. So, and have GI issues, and I could go on and on. So eating a bowl of pasta this big with no protein and no fat, stupid. You want to eat a well-balanced, good meal, of fat, protein, and carbs. What does that look like the night before a race? It's probably like 20% fat, 40% carbs, 40% protein, something like that. Good piece of meat. If you eat meat, some rice and some good veggies, and slather that with some butter and some avocado, and you got a good day. Pasta's fine, but don't ignore the fact that you should be taking on fat and protein the night before. Most importantly, don't eat a gut bomb. You're going to wake up, you're nervous, you're not going to sleep right, you're going to want to take a crap. Don't eat something is a disaster for you. Be smart the night before and during the race. When you get up in the morning, sleep is important. So you want, don't wake up 4 hours before the start just so you can eat breakfast and digest. And this is not a half marathon sprint. It's a 12-hour race. Your heart rate's not going to go into outer space, which means you're going to, or at least it's not going to stay there. You're going to be able to process some food in your stomach, which means get some sleep, wake up in enough time to have a reasonable breakfast, do your business, mentally prepare for what we're going to do, which is hike and fly racing, which requires actually your brain to function, your kit to be packed, for you to know your route, etc. But don't overly sacrifice sleep is what I'm trying to get at. For your breakfast, everybody's different. Gavin can talk about in the X-Alps. He ate different things each time trying to figure out what was right. I think at the end he ate almost no breakfast to start. We had breakfast 2 hours later. If I would give some advice for this race, because you don't have those kind of options, eat something that's obviously reasonably digestible to you, that's a significant portion of carbs, similar or a little less in protein, and a little bit of fat. Take a sourdough muffin, slather it with some peanut butter, and put some banana on top. I'm giving you examples. I could eat a breakfast burrito because I eat stuff like that and go exercise all the time, and that'd be good for me. But that's what I eat, and that would make me happy. If you eat oatmeal every morning, I probably wouldn't go eat 7 eggs and 4 slices of bacon, or what was that shit you liked, Gavin? Blood sausage?
Blood sausage.
So bad. Just be thoughtful that you want it to be digestible, but you also want it to have a little bit of everything. On the topic of taking a crap, it's important. It'll be important to you, right? It's less important in this race than if you're running, like I said, a short duration, high output event. And that's because you guys aren't trying to race Aaron Durgatti up the hill. So if you need to pull over and take a crap, who cares? You lose 4 minutes. Like, it just doesn't matter. So don't stress out if your body's not doing what you want it to. It'll do it at some point. Maybe it's at launch, you get nervous, whatever. But it's worth noting that people put a lot of energy into trying to have their digestive system totally perfect for endurance racing. And I think in hike and fly, it's less important because our races are so long and we have so many variables that aren't full on output from the start. Does that make sense? So got any thoughts on that, Gavin, before we go into wild
Yeah, I
racing?
would just say, you got time. And so what I'm hearing from this and what I'm just remembering from my own thing, it'd be really good for you all to go out. I know Ben probably has this planned into his programming a little bit too, but do a little simulation on this, because the one thing that does suck if you get the nutrition side wrong the morning of is you've gut bombed yourself and you get a bunch of GI issues, and you will learn what works and what doesn't if you do a couple simulations, uh, without going into I went the keto route and everything else after we had all the issues in 2015. Again, it's too late for that, but I did learn that there are some things you can eat, like for me, oatmeal, and especially with all kinds of good stuff in it, yogurt and berries and blah, 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 that would, I felt like I could just run a train up a mountain. Whereas sometimes, but not always, if I had a bunch of bacon and cheesy eggs and that kind of thing, halfway up, oh God, it just hits you. So be good to just find, Ben's got this weird thing where he really likes eating potatoes and pickles, and so just whatever you kind of find stuff that works. I got on the pickle program. I get to eat a whole jar of that juice sometimes. It's salty, it's delicious, it's a great electrolyte. So kind of find what works. But I guess the biggest hazard isn't so much what you eat, but what you eat the morning of, and to get the GI thing, that can kind of suck.
Totally. Yep. And so on the long days, in the next couple of weeks, go eat what you think you're going to race on, see what happens. Give it a whirl. And then I would err on the side for this race, for your category. I would err on the side of going less calorically dense in the morning and knowing you can shove some food in your mouth throughout the day. In the X-Alps, we had some other challenges in terms of the durations, the length that we might not see him, blah, 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 blah. For this one, if you're not totally sure, maybe eat 50 or 75% less than you think you should, but then take it with you, and then you can supplement as you go. So,
yeah, like if this was my race, what I would do is bulletproof coffee in the morning, and that'd be it. A whole bunch of butter and coffee, and then I do the 1,000 meters, and when I get to the top, I've handed me my bag, and in there is a really delicious breakfast burrito with a ton of cream cheese and eggs and potatoes and bacon, and a nice big feed. And because I'm waiting for the day to turn on, and I'm chowing that, and that's going to get me through most of the day. And then I've got some protein bars and some light stuff in my bag that I fly away with the hill, and I'm going to survive.
Totally good strategy too. If, like I said, I mean, and that's part of, he's learned that what makes him happy. So start experimenting. Don't be shy. So now you're actually racing. If we'd had our nutrition thing that I said we weren't going to have, you would know that I would tell you that a low-ish carbohydrate diet is generally the way to go. That ain't got dick shit to do with race day. Racing is about fueling what you need when you need. And the reality is, in endurance sports, your body is trying to figure out where to put the blood, right? So it's trying to move the blood to where it needs, which for us is probably our legs most of the time. And then it's also trying to move the nutrients where it needs, which is your legs, and then eventually your brain. Your brain runs entirely on sugar, unless you're in ketosis, and we're not going to talk about that. So you've got to strategize how you fuel yourself for what you're doing. What that means is, practically, it's probably 70-80% of the calories you take on during the race day should be carbohydrates, which is sugar. That's going to replace the glycogen in your muscles. It's also going to feed your brain. 10 to 15% protein. because we still need some protein replacement. There's some hormonal things that go on. There's some, other metabolic processes that aren't worth noting, but they've pretty reasonably shown that you still need to take on protein. Interesting, because I'm all the high fat guy. You don't need a lot of fat during race day. Your stomach will not really know what to do with it, and it can totally lead to a bunch of gut bombs. So if you're out there crushing hard, watch your fat. I like peanut butter. It's got some fat in it. It doesn't bother me. That being said, I don't know that I'd eat 5 avocados at lunchtime while I was going full effort. So those are some good guidelines. You can play with your own. I think if you just kind of tell yourself mostly carbs, a bit of protein, you'll be in a good spot. What does that actually look like? I like to mix, you want some whole foods. So whole foods could be, peanut butter, honey, and banana sandwiches. It could be a breakfast burrito. It could be, I don't know, fried chicken, whatever you think you might be able to eat. Again, we don't have like age state. Gavin's going to have some On-It bars and some protein bars, but you should also think about yourself and what makes you happy. And I put a cooler in the truck, and I could walk over, unzip it, and I'd pop open. There was a small Coke, and then there was the sandwich I wanted, and then there was my replacement gels, and I would roll out. You can go that route. You can rely on the aid that we're going to provide. But I would, for the whole food stuff, experiment again on your longer days, what makes you, what's digestible that you can actually get down your face when you're sweaty and hot, and then what sits in your stomach right. In terms of the actual, then stuff that's in your pack, besides maybe like one random sandwich or whatever, there's in general sugar. So whether you're crushing a goo or a chew or a honey stinger or a piece of bread, in theory, it's all the same. That's not really true. Some have more fructose than others. Some have more sucrose. Some things just taste like shit. I hate gooey, like the goos, the gels, but I can eat the chews. Gavin would always show up with this fancy shit that sucked, and then he would eat all of my chews, and I'd be out of power food in like 3 days. So, because he tried to, be all sponsor-ish, and then he just ate my scratch. That did happen twice, just so we're clear. So again, there's no like ad here. Like, you guys got to go figure out what makes you happy and then just eat it and get over it.
Yeah, I will say it's also important that when you find that stuff, that it's like Ben's talking about, some things are just going to give you GI issues. And he had these Scratch Lab gummies and some other gummies and stuff that I would crave them. Just going uphill, I knew he had them in his bag, and I couldn't wait to get them at the top. If you find stuff like that, that's also a pretty good sign that you're kind of borderline bonking. You're kind of you need sugar. We developed ways for me to get away from that as the races went by, but in the end, you still need carbs. I went through some serious brain fog doing the whole keto thing in the last race, where by day 6, why can't I think? You need some freaking oatmeal, dude. You need some sugar. So, but again, the GI thing is very real. Like, for example, I love sandwiches. I bake bread. I can't eat bread in a race. Just kills me. Cannot put bread down my mouth. I can't salivate enough. So experiment. You've still got what, 2.5 weeks ahead before this thing. And now's a good time to go out and hit some hard days and just see what works. You'll be much happier if you do.
I started buying the Wallabies Australian licorice in bulk, and I make my own power food because it's just sugar. Like, it's the same as paying for some expensive scratch, and I like it. It's palatable. I did the whole Chablis race on licorice. So, you know, you don't always got to go out and give the other, you know, the fancy brands their money too, if you find something you like. So not telling you all to eat licorice, but just an example. I mean, there's Tour de France riders that to this day, they just eat gummy bears because it's just, what is it? It's just, you know, just sucrose and fructose and a chewy thing that you can eat. So we're close to race. Again, it's not rocket science though. Just find something that you don't want to puke up and you'll be good. Make sure you have it on you. Make sure you have enough. Back to that. You know, the energy food companies will tell you that you should take on like 90 calories an hour. A lot of people do okay on 45 calories an hour. Some need more, some need less. I hate to keep telling you to experiment. That's part of the deal. You know, if you told yourself to have somewhere around 80 to 100 calories an hour on you, and then you could decide if you needed to eat it or not, and if you started feeling bonky to go ahead and eat it, that would be a good strategy. What I tend to do is I try and feed every 90 minutes if I'm going for a big day. 45 seems like too much. And normally I don't need to make myself feed every 90 minutes. Like 90 minutes is, you know, 3,000 feet of reasonable uphill. It's, what is that? That's, you know, 8-9 miles. If you're, you know, running, all of those tell you, okay, it's time to eat. And so you end up doing it anyways. 45 minutes trying to refeed. I've found most of my athletes that's not really relevant unless you're doing like a 100-mile race or something stupid where you're like literally just trying to not die for the next 48 hours. So don't overfeed. Don't shove it all in your mouth when you don't feel like you need it. If at all you feel like you need some calories and you're hungry, then I would take some on. The other thing is don't take on too much. Go ahead and eat just the, you know, 3 chews, not the whole bag. You can always stick the little baggie back in there, eat half of it, keep going, see if you feel better, go some more, then eat some more. And it's not that we're worried about like you eating too many calories because it's going to make you fat or something. It's back to Gavin's thought about the digestion. So your stomach has less ability to process food than it normally does. So if you can give it small doses that still sustain you and you can still have good energy, it'll work better because it's not having to do too much work for a giant gob of food that it can't deal with. And then simple foods are fine, are better.
I would say too, those of you who listen to the sleep one with Dr. Bill Beninati, you know, you kind of follow Peter Attia's advice here too. I think the worst thing you can probably do is drink too much, or even anything at all. But you know, Peter Attia's thing is very much, you know, you shouldn't have alcohol within 3 hours when you sleep. And Bill talked about that a lot. You know, the really key ingredient to racing well for 3 days, I would hazard, is not so much nutrition, but how you sleep. And so, you know, your whatever you put in your body should be geared towards, you know, being able to go hard for 12 hours, but also going to bed. So it can be pretty tempting. I have messed up a couple of my races in the X-Alps by having a gin and tonic at a bad time of the day, or an ice cream right before I go to bed. Or, you know, you've had a good day, you want to celebrate a little bit with your team or have some fun, and we'll have plenty of beer here at the XRedRocks. So it could be tempting, but, you know, have a gold beer and then probably put that to bed, and you know, make sure you're just careful with your alcohol intake so you can sleep well.
Totally. That's what I got. I got nothing else.
Me neither. We're almost out of time actually on this one, but let's you guys, we'll do a little quick Q&A. Anybody have any questions for Ben? there was somebody that sent me an email. I told them, I don't see them here though. Somebody sent me an email about the challenge
Yeah, I
race.
sent you an email, Gavin, after you launched, released the task yesterday. I just
Yep.
glanced at them and it was like, it just made me realize that I don't know how the format of the challenge differs from the adventure and pro division.
Basically, Steve, none at all. There's not, before it was, you sent me what was written up on the website. Before it was basically you hike up with everybody and then fly down, and then the rest of the day is kind of what you want to do. That's still the case, but if you want to rally and go hard, you are invited to do that. You have retrieve, you have support, you have all those kind of things. Basically, my job is to look after all the challenge people on launch a little more. And, if I see some kind of sketchy behavior, and I would do this with the adventure class as well, is, I'm going to come over and put my arm around you and, hey, you got this. But, we're not instructors. We're not pretending to be, we're just mentoring a little bit. And we want to have everybody after 3 days be safe and unhurt and have fun. So you are more than welcome to go as hard as you want, and you pick your poison. We just don't want any pressure on any of the challenge people. You're not going to be scored. We don't want any pressure on the challenge people to perform. Your day can end at 11 a.m. or it can end at 9 p.m. It's totally up to you. We don't care. And your question about getting into the adventure class or the pro class in the future, that's exactly why we built this. So the only reason you wouldn't after 1 year of challenges, if you do a bunch of sketchy stuff that we're not impressed by, but if you have safe launches and safe landings and you have fun and you go home and you just got a couple blisters and nothing else is wrong, then you'll be invited to compete in the adventure class. It's a stepping stone. It's not, we're not grading everybody on their skills. It's just, if you can be safe in the mountains, then you should be in the adventure class, period. So, yeah, that's it. It's not, in other words, it's not, you don't have to reach some criteria. You're safe, you have fun. We'll see you in 24 in the adventure class, period. That's it.
Gavin, remind me, is the first day the Thursday of the race?
Correct. Yeah, we'll do the safety briefing Wednesday. And we've got a presentation that night. I don't know who it'll be at. It'll either be Pal or Aaron or Marcus. And then we'll that'll be an earlier night. And then we'll do my thing, which takes 15 minutes. And everybody can go to bed. And then we'll start the race the next morning at 8, weather permitting.
So the 26th for y'all, I'll be there. I'm going to get there early. The 26th, we'll probably do a morning hike to Cove. If you haven't done it, the route is totally fucked. There is no route. I've stolen the route from Tyler Burns and put it in my watch, and I'm going to share that. And we'll do a totally mellow, slow. It's 2 days before the race, which is totally fine. And go have some camaraderie and talk about shit and walk up to Cove. So if anyone's interested in the 26th, we're going to do that. On the 27th, assuming the weather's not totally fucked and we think we know what the tasks are going to be, I'll be around. We can meet, and for the challenge folks, kind of talk about strategy in the next 3 days. Likely that'll be more of an evening kind of deal. But I'll be posting it all. I just want to put it on your guys' radar that we will have some extraneous stuff and we'll be available to kind of help you guys is the plan. And then we'll see how it goes. But, what I'm hoping is that kind of every night before each task, whether it's depending on how late it is, could be via text, or if we can do it in person, we'll kind of have a quick kind of challenge meeting to talk about the next day and some strategy, etc. If it's too late, maybe we'll do it the morning, 15 minutes before the actual start time. But we're going to try to have a little extra for you guys, to at least have a forum where we can talk about the day, every day.
The other thing we're going to try to do for all of you, and we'll again put this out on the Telegram channels and that kind of thing, but there was complaints last year that people didn't get to rub shoulders enough with the Europeans. And this is, really about sharing knowledge. And so Ben and I actually went over the Europeans every night last time because they were clueless. They hadn't done any of the homework. They didn't know where they were practically. So Ben was kind of doing what he just said he was going to do with them just to get them aligned with where the place was and that kind of thing. And, work on the tech because it's all, our apps are different than Europe and that kind of thing. So we will try to make that available to you all as well. And it's just, no reason to say the same thing twice. So, Ben and I will be floating around, and you're all more than welcome to join us and hang out with those guys. It's fun to watch them operate.
Unless you're following up a mountain and then just watch from afar. It's better that way.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Any critical questions or otherwise we'll sign off, and we're going to do another one next week. The wide open starts Saturday is the practice day. So I'm going to be down and busy with that this next week. I know a couple of you are doing that, ribs and stuff, but Colin. So I don't know if we'll do one next week. Maybe if we get a weather day, we will, but otherwise immediately after that, which will be basically the week before the next race, we'll do this talk that Ben Walker was talking about on the tasks and strategy and getting them in your instruments. This will be very basic, just be a general overview, but it'll be a little bit different than what Ben did about his, Chablais and routing and that kind of thing. It'll be more just kind of the basics and get you so you're feeling comfortable about what to take from the task. Because ideally, we've never been able to do this because of the weather, but ideally what we do is call all 3 tasks for the 3 different days before the race starts. So Wednesday night, we get done with the safety briefing. Here's the 3 tasks, have fun the next 3 days. We've never been able to do that. The weather's always thrown some twists and turns into things, but that's the goal. That's what we'd like to do.
Hey, Gavin, during that talk with Ben that's coming up, is there going to be an opportunity during that to just talk about local beta for the valley? Like Mount Etna works great here and here. This is the ridge everyone uses, that kind of stuff.
Great idea. Yeah, we'll fold that into that. That's a great idea. Be fun to have Tyler Burns on with that one or something, one of the locals.
Yeah.
Good idea, Adam. Yeah, I'll make a note of that, and we'll try to give a good overview. I'm actually doing that for the wide open. I've got a little Google Earth kind of zoom in, zoom out. Here's the swell, here's Cove, here's Edna, here's Monroe, and all those kind of things. But kind of the general weather patterns. But that's a great idea. We'll do that.
Thanks. Of course, in hike and fly racing, it's cool that sometimes you just don't get to do that. That's part of what's special about this sport.
We had a really funny thing with the insurance, last year. They said, okay, well, you're going to have to tell us all the places that everybody's going to launch. And I went, wait, what? What are you talking about? It's a hike and fly race. How can I possibly do that? You'd be taking off between the trees and stuff, like, what? What are you talking about? And where they're all going to land.
Nice. Yeah, that one's good.
What?
Yeah.
That's a definition of that's not going to work. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good night. Thanks for joining us so last minute. Thanks, Ben.